So, I am Emily List, and I am presenting Physical Education Cultures in Sweden, Fitness, Sports, Dancing, and Learning. So, the purpose of this research was to explore the understanding between physical education and the students' response to the teaching styles and what the outcome from that would look like. So, the review of literature. In recent years, learning in physical education has been a recurring theme. Um, just learning while you are in that physical environment. Um, and then from Crumb's research, this is a direct quote. Um, Movement cultures are ways in which a social group deals with the need and desire for movement beyond labor or maintaining life. So this is sports, games, dodgeball, things like that. Physical education teachers do not always think their job is to help children learn. They see it as a way for them to just get up out of their desks for an hour, a couple days a week. But in Sweden, physical education is more than just sports education. It is seen as mandatory and important, even if the teachers or the students cannot exactly verbalize why that is. Physical education is supposed to be a way to introduce kids to a movement culture in which they can participate in for years to come. So this is teaching students how they can maintain a physical lifestyle in a sustainable way. So they had several questions they wanted to answer. The first one being, what is known about physical education? How is it performed? And how do the students respond? How does the physical education impact students' lives? And what is it all about? What is the purpose of it? And how does it play a role in our society? So video footage was taken for analysis of teaching style and the students' reception. There were 30 physical education lessons that were recorded at 4 different schools. The locations of these schools varied from in the city center to rural to suburban, just all kinds. And then the teachers included both male and female teachers to get rid of any kind of bias that would be seen from only having one. So the lessons were recorded during one term. Each lesson was between 40 and 80 minutes. There were 2 cameras present at each of the 30 lessons. One was stationary and recorded the broad movements of the teachers and the students. And then there was also a handheld camera that was there that picked up on the speech and the reception. So the pace and intensity of the lessons were measured, and the attentiveness of the students at various times throughout the lesson was noted. So the lessons were qualitatively analyzed for their structure and student response, participation, and the communicated purpose of the activity was of particular interest and was noted by the researchers each lesson. So what they found from this is that most Swedish schools have PE twice a week for an hour, or they have once a week for an hour and a half. So that just varies by the school. The class starts off pretty much universally with a gathering where the name of the day's activity is announced and the rules are given. The purpose of the activity was rarely stated, and the learning objectives that these teachers have to go off of is very obscure, and there's very limited time for each activity. So like if the activity is baseball, they may only devote a couple lessons to it, which is not really enough time for any student to really get in or learn anything or develop any muscle groups. So the structure of the lesson always went gathering, warm up, main activity, cool down, and gathering. So the first gathering, as I said, is to just introduce the activity. The warm up was meant to warm the muscles up, usually included running or stretching, things like that. And then the main activity, cool down, was anything from another light run to cleaning up the equipment from the day, and then end of the day gathering where they talk about what they just did and what they learned. So they also found that PE teachers see their work as an introduction to different types of training, but not actually engaging in the actual training. So it's like a sampler plate where students learn what is out there without actually getting involved in it. Okay, and discussion. So the physical education environment is very easygoing and it's more like a recreation room rather than an actual training session. So like I said, they're just having fun and not actually developing any kind of real muscles or learning how to maintain the movement in their own life. So the activities are not well planned out because of the very obscure guidelines, and the time devoted to each one is too limited, and the teacher's education on each of the activities is not really in depth because it's hard to have a teacher who knows gymnastics really well and football really well. And the teachers may not really know what their objectives are for the class. So they don't know how to adequately teach the students to what they're supposed to. PE classes should be reformed to look more like sports education rather than half-hearted learning or training, half-hearted training, sorry. Yeah. So my take on this research is that it was not really well structured. It was very cumbersome to read. The sections did not flow at all. It seemed like they put information in the wrong spaces. New information was introduced and new research was introduced from start to finish instead of it all being gathered in the introduction, so I wouldn't have to keep going back to their works cited page and looking up what they're talking about. Um, yeah, and they just jumped around a lot. I understand what they were trying to go for. My own personal experience in PE was, just like free play. There was a couple weeks where we learned flag football and baseball. But other than that, we did not really enhance our knowledge. It was just a way for us to get out of the classes and the schools for a little bit, and most of the time the boys would play soccer and a lot of the girls would play volleyball for an hour and no structure. I think reforms would be good to put more of an emphasis on learning so that students know how to sustain and maintain movement throughout their life. But I doubt any kind of change will come to this at any time because uh, any kind of change in the education system and education of the teachers so that they can do this better costs money, and it's not a system that's really that broken, so I don't think it's going to be allotted. So thank you.